Right, well, good morning everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We've already had very good interest about this unveiling. Just again say, my name is Kenneth Bannerman. I'm the founder and head of the Airfields of Britain Conservation Trust, which is the world's first national airfield charity. We formed in 2006 and we're based in Glasgow. So just before I give a quick potted history of Atcham Airfield and why all this matters as well, looking at the bigger picture, I'll introduce you to Councillor Colin Wildblood, who'd like to say a few words.
Yes, thank you, Kenneth. It's me being here has transpired a conversation that Kenneth had with my parish clerk. She's here somewhere over there, Alison, asking if she knew of anyone in the area of Atcham that had any contact with the airfield. And I said, well, I have sort of a slight interest in that. My father was stationed here for a while, and during his stay here he used to cycle from here to Berrington Hospital to see when his son was born. That's in 1942 in January. So it would have been a fairly hairy trip to if anybody knows the way up to Berrington, it's not the easiest of routes, especially on a bike. So really that's all my involvement really, except that I'm very proud that this has been erected here, and there's a lot of effort gone in on behalf of Kenneth and his team. And it's very nice to see everybody here to come and have a look at this being unveiled. So really, there's nothing much more for me to say, is there, Ken?
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll just give you a quick potted history, as I've said, of the airfield, why all this matters in the big picture. I'll keep this very short actually. Atcham Airfield, the land for it was requisitioned in October 1940, and then after a fairly quick construction phase, the airfield opened in August 1941. It was initially an RAF fighter airfield, what was called a sector station. So it had a bit more in the way of control, and various RAF squadrons here, flying Spitfires, were based here until quite a bit into 1942. There were some quite famous visitors here in the fairly early days. For example, Lord Trenchard, the father of the Royal Air Force. But another very significant visitor was famous United States Army Air Forces General Carroll Toohey Spatz, famous US general. And that was very important because in the early summer of 1942, Atcham was transferred from RAF to USAAF use as an advanced training airfield. It was initially regarded as what was called a Combat Crew Replacement Centre, or CCRC. And then with various name changes, the unit that was primarily based here was called the 495th Fighter Training Group, or FTG. And this flew notably one of America's most famous fighters, the very bulky Republic P-47, or also known as the Thunderbolt. And this was a really busy airfield. Just for that reason alone, Atcham played a massive part in the winning of World War II. Tremendously busy. So that carried on until the early part of 1945, when the FTG moved to Cheddington in Buckinghamshire, which incidentally knows of ABCT very well through internet connections. So shortly after that, the airfield switched back to Royal Air Force control, but instead of being Fighter Command, it now came under the control of Flying Training Command, and it became a major relief landing ground for the training aircraft of a unit based at one of Shropshire's most famous airfields, Turnhill. So that carried on for another year until the spring of 1946, when flying finished. The airfield then completely closed the following October. After that, military vehicles were stored here. The War Office took over control, but then supervision of the airfield passed back to the Air Ministry in 1952 under another very famous airfield you know of course, Shawbury. And that carried on until 1958. Since then, there have been a lot of changes, buildings have gone, but Atcham is still hugely relevant today in all sorts of ways, not just when it comes to history and military achievement, just everyday social life. And that's why looking at the bigger picture, as we have to do with everything involving Britain's airfields, as we do say in our travels, please do all you reasonably can to help, support and recognise all of Britain's airfields, active and disused, and of course not forgetting all the incredibly brave and dedicated people who have served at them, and in turn as well their families. Enough to just say there, I mean too long to mention of course, but enough to say there that it's easily provable that we just cannot remotely afford to lose Britain's airfields in our everyday lives. They are incredibly important beyond all belief. And as I was just saying, for example, in a radio interview this morning in BBC Radio Shropshire, just on a quick personal note, I recognised that as far back as 1973, when I was not quite 10 years old. I mean, I was still at primary school. And it just hit me there and then that not only the phenomenal importance of our airfields and all the people associated with them, but very sadly how abysmally badly they were all being treated. And therefore, we just really had to get out there and do something to try and help everybody involved. And I can only say with what we are doing for ABCT, as we also call the charity for short, we are really making things happen. I mean, just on a quick side note, I think I've said to one or two of you already, you may well remember this. There was a World War I hangar under threat at Shrewsbury, or Monkmoor, where we'll be at a bit later today. And we, among others, of course, like the Shrewsbury Civic Society, our good friends there, we played a massive part in saving that hangar. And we were told the first time we saved it, it was actually 5 times we saved it now, that we were told that through saving that hangar we'd saved 30 people from losing their jobs. But bear in mind that that airfield was not used in the dictionary sense of the term since the early 1930s, not even World War II. So that's a classic example of why we have just got to do so much more within reason to try and help our airfields. And you know, they have done so much for us, and we need to help them just for our own sakes. It's just as relatively simple as that. So again, thank you so much for attending, and therefore Councillor Wildblood and I are very honoured to be able to unveil this latest memorial to yet another of Britain's top physical and historical assets, in this case the one and only Atcham Airfield. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.